Luxe Avenue, nestled in the heart of the city's most exclusive shopping district, was a name synonymous with sophistication and wealth. Its grand glass facade sparkled under the sunlight, showcasing mannequins draped in couture outfits that seemed more suited for an art gallery than everyday wear. Inside, the atmosphere was quiet and pristine, the kind of silence that whispered, if you had to ask the price, you didn't belong. Customers who entered Luxe Avenue weren't just there to shop, they were there to make a statement. Behind the counter stood Mr. Brooks, the boutique's proud and sharp-tongued owner. His tailored suit was as polished as his demeanor, exuding an air of authority that left no room for questions. For Mr. Brooks, Luxe Avenue wasn't just a store, it was his kingdom. And he ruled it with a strict set of unwritten rules, the most important of which was simple: exclusivity over everything. If a customer didn't look the part, they weren't worth his time. Remember, he said to his staff during their morning briefing, his voice clipped and precise, this boutique isn't for everyone. We cater to a specific clientele, those who understand the value of what we offer. If someone doesn't look like they belong, don't waste your energy. Redirect them elsewhere. Our image depends on it. The staff nodded silently, their expressions carefully neutral. They had heard this speech countless times before. Many of them had grown accustomed to Mr. Brooks's elitist attitude, but for some, like the younger and more idealistic employees, his words still stung. Lila, a junior sales associate who had been working at Luxe Avenue for only a few months, glanced at the floor to hide her discomfort. She had taken the job hoping to learn about high-end retail, but moments like this made her question whether she belonged here at all. As the boutique opened its doors for the day, Mr. Brooks positioned himself behind the counter, his sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk surveying its territory. The first customer of the morning was a middle-aged woman draped in designer labels from head to toe. Her oversized sunglasses and sparkling handbag announced her wealth before she even spoke. Mr. Brooks's expression immediately softened into a warm, practiced smile. "Good morning, madam," he said, his voice dripping with charm. "It's always a pleasure to see someone with such impeccable taste. How can we assist you today?" The woman smiled back, basking in the attention as she began browsing the store's most exclusive racks. Mr. Brooks followed her movements with keen interest, already calculating the potential size of the sale. Moments later, the boutique's doorbell chimed again, signaling the arrival of another customer. This time, it was a young couple dressed casually in jeans and t-shirts. They paused near the entrance, their eyes widening as they took in the boutique's opulence. Mr. Brooks's welcoming expression vanished in an instant, replaced by a look of thinly veiled disdain. Without a word, he gestured for Lila to approach them. "Handle it," he muttered under his breath, waving his hand dismissively. "And make it quick. They're not our clientele." Lila hesitated, glancing nervously at the couple, who seemed genuinely interested in the displays. She opened her mouth to greet them, but before she could speak, Mr. Brooks interrupted, his voice loud enough for everyone in the boutique to hear. "Excuse me," he said, stepping forward, "if you're looking for something more affordable, there's a department store just down the street. I'm sure they'll have what you need." The couple exchanged awkward glances, their faces flushing with embarrassment. Without a word, they turned and left, the boutique's doorbell chiming once again as it closed behind them. Lila watched them go, her stomach sinking. She wanted to say something, to apologize, to tell them it wasn't personal, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she returned to her station, silently vowing to herself that she wouldn't let this become normal. Meanwhile, Mr. Brooks returned to his counter, his demeanor as unbothered as ever. For him, incidents like this were part of maintaining the boutique's image. Luxe Avenue wasn't just about selling clothes, it was about selling exclusivity, and exclusivity, in his mind, required gatekeeping. As the morning progressed, more customers trickled in, each one scrutinized by Mr. Brooks before being deemed worthy of attention. Some passed his unspoken test and received the boutique's full hospitality. Others, who didn't fit his narrow definition of luxury, were quietly ignored or redirected elsewhere. For Mr. Brooks, this was just another day of business as usual. But for Lila, it was a stark reminder of the boutique's underlying culture, one that valued appearances over people. By noon, the boutique had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Mr. Brooks was chatting with a regular customer about an upcoming fashion show when the boutique's doorbell chimed again. He glanced toward the entrance, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the man who had just walked in. The newcomer was tall and broad-shouldered, his movements calm and self-assured. He wore a simple black t-shirt and well-fitted jeans, paired with sneakers that were practical rather than flashy. There was an air of quiet confidence about him, but Mr. Brooks didn't notice. His gaze lingered on the man's casual attire, and his judgment was swift and absolute. To him, this man didn't belong. "Another browser," Mr. Brooks muttered under his breath, turning his attention back to the regular customer. But the man didn't seem to notice, or care. He walked further into the boutique, pausing to admire a display of tailored blazers. His fingers brushed lightly over the fabric, his expression thoughtful. From behind the counter, Lila watched the interaction unfold. She didn't know who the man was, but there was something about him that caught her attention. He didn't have the nervous energy of someone out of their depth, nor the pretentious air of someone trying to prove themselves. He seemed comfortable, curious. But Mr. Brooks didn't see it that way. This was the beginning of a day Mr. Brooks would never forget. He just didn't know it yet. As the man moved deeper into the boutique, his calm and deliberate manner seemed to stand in stark contrast to the judgmental energy radiating from Mr. Brooks. The man was Avery James, a globally celebrated fashion designer known for his innovative work that seamlessly blended modern aesthetics with traditional elements. His designs had graced the covers of the world's most prestigious fashion magazines, and his name was synonymous with creativity and success. But today, Avery wasn't here to flaunt his fame. He was here to find inspiration, and perhaps a few key pieces, for an upcoming gala. Avery wasn't dressed to impress. After spending a long morning sketching designs in his studio, he had opted for simplicity: a black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers that he wore for comfort, not style. He didn't need an entourage or a flashy outfit to command respect. He was used to being recognized wherever he went, but for him, respect wasn't something that came from external appearances. It was about how people treated each other, regardless of who they were or what they looked like. Mr. Brooks, however, didn't see a world-renowned designer standing in his boutique. He saw a man whose casual attire didn't fit the boutique's carefully curated image. From behind the counter, he watched Avery browse the displays with a critical eye, muttering under his breath, "What is he even doing here? Browsing for ideas he can't afford." His tone was laced with disdain, and the dismissive remark didn't go unnoticed by Lila, who winced at her boss's words. Avery paused at a rack of tailored blazers, his fingers brushing against the fabric as he examined the intricate stitching. He could appreciate the craftsmanship, though he mentally noted a few areas that could be improved. Lost in thought, he barely noticed when Mr. Brooks began approaching him, his expression set in polite indifference. "Can I help you, sir?" Mr. Brooks asked, his tone overly formal but unmistakably cold. The question didn't feel like an invitation, it felt like a challenge. Avery turned, meeting the boutique owner's gaze with a calm smile. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "I'm looking for a few pieces for an upcoming event. Could you show me some of your exclusive collection?" Mr. Brooks raised an eyebrow, his eyes scanning Avery from head to toe as if searching for a reason to take him seriously. The man's casual attire and relaxed demeanor didn't align with what Mr. Brooks considered exclusive clientele. Instead of answering, he offered a thin smile. "Our exclusive collection is quite premium," he said, his tone dripping with subtle condescension. "Perhaps I could show you something more suitable." Lila, standing nearby, felt her stomach tighten. She had seen Mr. Brooks dismiss customers before, but this felt different. There was a confidence in the man's posture, a quiet assurance that suggested he wasn't someone to be underestimated. Yet Mr. Brooks seemed blind to it, too caught up in his own assumptions to see the reality of who he was speaking to. Avery's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or quiet resolve. "I appreciate the suggestion," he said politely, "but I'd still like to see your exclusive collection. I'm particularly interested in pieces with unique tailoring and bold designs." His voice was calm but firm, a subtle reminder that he wasn't asking for permission. Mr. Brooks hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the man's composure. For a moment, it seemed like he might relent, but his pride wouldn't let him. "I'm afraid those pieces are reserved for our regular customers," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "They're very expensive, and I wouldn't want to waste your time." The words hung in the air like a slap. Lila glanced at Avery, half expecting him to react with anger or indignation. But to her surprise, he simply nodded, his smile still in place. "I see," he said quietly. There was no malice in his tone, only an air of quiet understanding that somehow felt more cutting than any argument could have been. Avery stepped back from the display, his movements deliberate. He took one last glance around the boutique before turning to leave. As he walked toward the door, Mr. Brooks watched him go with a smug expression, as if he had successfully protected the sanctity of his store. Lila, on the other hand, felt a sinking sensation in her chest. She didn't know who the man was, but something about the encounter felt wrong. Outside, Avery paused on the sidewalk, his hands in his pockets as he looked back at the boutique's gleaming facade. The disappointment in his eyes was fleeting, replaced quickly by a calm determination. He had faced moments like this before, moments where assumptions and arrogance had overshadowed respect. But he knew better than to dwell on them. Instead, he made a quiet decision. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Inside the boutique, Mr. Brooks returned to his counter, his satisfaction evident as he resumed his conversation with the regular customer. For him, the encounter was already forgotten, a minor interruption in an otherwise normal day. But what Mr. Brooks didn't realize was that the man he had just dismissed wasn't just any customer. He was Avery James, a designer whose influence could make or break the very image Luxe Avenue prided itself on. Lila, however, couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would come back to haunt the boutique. As she went about her duties, she found herself replaying the moment in her mind, wondering what might have happened if Mr. Brooks had treated the man differently. She didn't know it yet, but her instincts were right. Change was coming to Luxe Avenue, and it would start with the very man they had turned away. As Avery walked away from Luxe Avenue, the cool afternoon air felt lighter than the stifling judgment he had left behind in the boutique. He wasn't angry, disappointment and frustration, perhaps, but anger wasn't how he chose to respond to moments like these. Instead, he channeled those emotions into action, the way he always had. This wasn't the first time someone had judged him by his appearance, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. But it would be a mistake for Mr. Brooks to assume that this moment would pass unnoticed. Back at the boutique, Mr. Brooks carried on as if nothing had happened. For him, the encounter with Avery was just another instance of weeding out someone who didn't belong. He had no way of knowing that the man he had dismissed so casually was one of the most influential figures in the fashion world. Luxe Avenue's carefully constructed reputation as an exclusive, high-end destination would soon face scrutiny it was unprepared for. Meanwhile, Avery returned to his studio, a bright and spacious space filled with sketches, fabric swatches, and racks of unfinished designs. It was his sanctuary, a place where creativity flowed freely. Sitting down at his desk, he opened his phone and stared at the screen for a moment, considering his next move. He had seen situations like this before, boutiques and brands losing sight of what truly mattered, blinded by their obsession with exclusivity. But Avery believed in using his platform to highlight these issues, not for revenge, but for progress. After a moment of thought, Avery drafted a post on his social media account. He described the experience at Luxe Avenue without naming the boutique directly, detailing how he had been judged and dismissed based solely on his appearance. His words were measured, not accusatory, but they carried a powerful message. Luxury should never come at the cost of respect. The post ended with a simple call to action. It's time to support businesses that value people, not just appearances. Within hours, Avery's post began to gain traction. His followers, many of whom were fellow designers, industry insiders, and fashion enthusiasts, shared the post widely. Comments poured in from people who had experienced similar moments of discrimination in retail spaces, and the story quickly resonated beyond the fashion community. Celebrities, influencers, and everyday shoppers joined the conversation, using their platforms to amplify Avery's message. Although Avery hadn't named Luxe Avenue, the boutique's identity didn't remain a mystery for long. Some eagle-eyed followers recognized the store from the photo Avery had included with his post, a shot of the boutique's distinctive glass facade. Others pieced it together from clues in the story. Before long, Luxe Avenue found itself at the center of a growing storm, with social media users flooding their accounts with questions and criticism. By the next morning, the boutique's once polished social media presence was in disarray. Negative comments piled up on every post, ranging from mild disappointment to outright outrage. "Is this how you treat your customers?" one user wrote. "Disgusting behavior for a so-called luxury brand," said another. The boutique's official Instagram account, managed by a junior employee who hadn't been briefed on how to handle such situations, responded defensively at first, further fueling the backlash. Inside the boutique, Mr. Brooks remained oblivious to the growing controversy. He was too busy preparing for a meeting with a luxury brand representative to notice the shift in atmosphere. But his employees, particularly Lila, were well aware of what was happening. Between customers, Lila scrolled through her phone, her eyes widening as she read the comments under Avery's post. She recognized the boutique immediately and felt a pang of guilt, knowing she had been complicit in an environment that allowed such behavior to thrive. As the morning wore on, customers began canceling their appointments. The boutique's phone, which usually buzzed with inquiries and orders, was eerily silent. Mr. Brooks frowned, muttering about how people these days were too unpredictable. When a colleague tried to inform him about the situation on social media, he brushed it off. "It's just a few disgruntled people online," he said dismissively. "They'll forget about it in a day or two." But Mr. Brooks's confidence was misplaced. By midday, the backlash had reached the attention of the brands Luxe Avenue partnered with. Representatives from a major luxury label called to inquire about the allegations, their tone curt and professional. "We've seen the reports circulating," they said. "Our brand is committed to inclusivity and respect. We need to understand what happened." For the first time, Mr. Brooks felt a twinge of unease, though he quickly buried it beneath his usual bravado. Meanwhile, Avery's post continued to spark important conversations across the industry. Many used the opportunity to call out similar experiences of discrimination in other high-end retail spaces, creating a broader movement. Influencers with millions of followers weighed in, some of them tagging Luxe Avenue directly and urging their audiences to boycott the boutique. The hashtag respect over luxury began trending, further amplifying the message. By the end of the day, Mr. Brooks couldn't ignore the fallout any longer. The boutique was nearly empty, with only a few hesitant customers trickling in, their conversations hushed as they glanced at their phones. When Mr. Brooks finally opened social media to see what was happening, his face paled. The boutique's reputation, once its greatest asset, was unraveling before his eyes. Negative reviews flooded online platforms, and even loyal customers began voicing their disappointment. Lila watched her boss's reaction with a mix of apprehension and vindication. She had long felt uneasy about the boutique's elitist culture, and now, it seemed, the consequences were catching up. But she also felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this moment could be a turning point, not just for the boutique, but for everyone who had experienced the sting of judgment in spaces like this. Avery, meanwhile, remained focused on his work. He didn't dwell on the boutique's response or the fallout. Instead, he used the momentum of his post to highlight smaller, inclusive brands, encouraging his followers to support businesses that valued respect and creativity. He shared stories of designers and retailers who were making a difference, shifting the spotlight to those who deserved it most. By the time the boutique closed its doors that evening, the mood inside was tense and uncertain. Mr. Brooks, though still in denial, could no longer pretend that this was a minor issue. Luxe Avenue's image was tarnished, its future hanging by a thread. And outside, the world continued to watch, waiting to see how the boutique would respond, or if it would survive. As the next morning dawned, Luxe Avenue's glass facade gleamed as always, but the atmosphere inside the boutique was anything but pristine. The usual quiet hum of activity had been replaced by an uneasy stillness. Employees whispered amongst themselves, stealing glances at their phones, where notifications about the growing controversy continued to flood in. The store, once a symbol of exclusivity and sophistication, now found itself at the center of a storm. Mr. Brooks arrived at the boutique with his usual air of confidence, completely unaware of the chaos brewing online. As he stepped inside, his sharp eyes swept the room, immediately picking up on the tension among his staff. "What's going on?" he asked curtly, his tone more of a demand than a question. Lila hesitated, clutching her phone nervously, but another employee spoke up. "It's about the man from yesterday," she said cautiously. "He posted about what happened. It's everywhere." Mr. Brooks frowned, clearly unimpressed. "And," he said, waving a hand dismissively, "let me guess, a few complainers online blowing things out of proportion. These things always die down. People have short memories." Lila exchanged an uneasy glance with her colleagues but said nothing. She knew Mr. Brooks wouldn't take the situation seriously unless he saw the fallout for himself. It didn't take long for him to realize how wrong he was. As the first customer of the day entered the boutique, A regular who often spent thousands on designer items, she approached the counter with a cold expression. "Mr. Brooks," she began, her voice sharp, "I've been hearing troubling things about how you run this store. Is it true that you dismissed a customer yesterday because of how he looked?" Mr. Brooks stiffened, his usual charm faltering for a moment. "That's not how I'd put it," he said smoothly, though there was a slight edge to his voice. "We simply aim to provide a curated experience for our clientele." The customer raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Curated," she repeated, her tone icy. "It sounds more like discrimination to me. I won't be shopping here again." With that, she turned and walked out, leaving Mr. Brooks standing in stunned silence. As the morning wore on, the boutique saw fewer and fewer customers. Several canceled their appointments outright, citing the controversy as their reason. Mr. Brooks tried to maintain his composure, but his irritation was becoming harder to hide. When another employee approached him with updates about the boutique's plummeting social media engagement, he snapped. "Enough with this nonsense," he barked. "It's just a few trolls stirring up drama. They'll forget about it in a day or two." By midday, the boutique's corporate partners began calling. The first was a representative from a major fashion brand Luxe Avenue had worked with for years. "We've received several complaints about your boutique's practices," the representative said, her tone professional but firm. "Our brand is committed to inclusivity, and these allegations are deeply concerning. We'll need to review our partnership." Mr. Brooks's hand tightened around the phone as he tried to protest, but the representative cut him off. "This isn't negotiable," she said before hanging up. One by one, other brands followed suit, some suspending their collaborations with Luxe Avenue and others severing ties altogether. By the afternoon, the boutique had lost 3 of its top-tier partnerships, deals that accounted for a significant portion of its revenue. For the first time, Mr. Brooks began to feel the weight of the situation. His carefully constructed image of exclusivity was crumbling, and there was no easy way to rebuild it. Meanwhile, Lila and her colleagues watched the fallout with a mix of unease and quiet vindication. Many of them had grown tired of Mr. Brooks's elitist policies, but they had never imagined it would lead to a public reckoning of this scale. Lila, in particular, found herself reflecting on her own role in the boutique's culture. She had stayed silent during moments of judgment and dismissal, convincing herself it wasn't her place to speak up. But now, as the consequences of those moments unfolded, she wondered if silence had been the wrong choice. Throughout the day, Avery's post continued to gain traction. Celebrities and influencers shared it with their own audiences, many of them adding personal anecdotes about similar experiences in high-end retail. The hashtag Respect Over Luxury trended on multiple platforms, with users calling for a boycott of Luxe Avenue. "It's not just about one boutique," one influencer wrote. "This is about changing the way luxury spaces treat people. Everyone deserves respect." By the time the boutique closed for the day, Mr. Brooks was visibly shaken. The store, which normally bustled with activity even during slow seasons, had been nearly empty all afternoon. The loss of partnerships, combined with the public backlash, left the boutique's future uncertain. For the first time in years, Mr. Brooks felt his grip on Luxe Avenue slipping, and it terrified him. Back at his studio, Avery remained focused on his work, letting the movement sparked by his post unfold organically. He hadn't named Luxe Avenue in his original message, but he knew that the boutique's reputation would suffer once people connected the dots. Still, his goal wasn't to destroy the store, it was to spark a larger conversation about respect and inclusivity in luxury spaces. And that conversation was happening, louder and more urgently than he had anticipated. Lila, unable to shake the events of the day, stayed behind after the boutique closed, cleaning up displays and organizing racks. As she worked, she replayed the encounter with Avery in her mind, feeling a growing sense of guilt. She didn't know who Avery was at the time, but she had sensed his quiet confidence and knew he deserved better than the treatment he received. For the first time, she considered speaking up, not just to Mr. Brooks, but to the corporate office that oversaw the boutique. "This can't go on like this," she thought. "Something has to change." As the evening wore on, the boutique's once pristine reputation continued to unravel. Negative reviews flooded online platforms, and former customers shared their own stories of feeling unwelcome or dismissed at Luxe Avenue. The backlash was no longer just about one incident, it was about a culture that had gone unchecked for too long. And as the pressure mounted, it became clear that this was only the beginning. The following day, Luxe Avenue was eerily quiet. The boutique's once bustling showroom, usually filled with the hum of chatter and the clicking of heels against marble floors, was now silent. Employees stood awkwardly behind counters, their usual tasks of arranging and selling replaced by hushed conversations and uneasy glances toward the front door. It wasn't just another slow day. This was something different, something more ominous. Mr. Brooks sat in his office, his fingers drumming against the desk as he stared at the boutique sales report from the previous day. The numbers were bleak, a dramatic dip in foot traffic, canceled appointments, and declining revenue. The losses from severed partnerships were already making their mark, and the backlash online showed no signs of slowing. Still, Mr. Brooks clung stubbornly to the belief that this was just a temporary setback. "People are fickle," he muttered to himself. "This will blow over." Meanwhile, on social media, Avery's post continued to spark conversations. The hashtag #RespectOverLuxury had grown into a movement, with people sharing their own stories of feeling excluded or judged in luxury spaces. Many tagged Luxe Avenue directly, demanding accountability and transparency. "This isn't just about one boutique," one user wrote. "It's about breaking the toxic culture of exclusivity that so many luxury brands thrive on." As the movement gained momentum, news outlets began to take notice. Articles and opinion pieces appeared, detailing the controversy surrounding Luxe Avenue and the larger issues it represented. Reporters reached out to Avery for comment, and while he declined interviews, he released a brief statement on his social media. "This isn't about me. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of appearance, is treated with dignity and respect. Luxury isn't about exclusion, it's about experience." The boutique's corporate office was quick to react. By mid-morning, Mr. Brooks received a phone call from a senior executive. The conversation was tense, with the executive demanding answers about the allegations and the boutique's plummeting reputation. "This is unacceptable," the executive said sharply. "We've built this brand on trust and prestige, and your actions are jeopardizing everything. We need a plan to fix this, immediately." Mr. Brooks, for once, had no smooth response. He promised to address the issue, though it was clear he had no idea how. Lila watched the fallout unfold with a mix of anxiety and quiet resolve. She had spent the past few days reflecting on her role in the boutique's culture and had decided she could no longer stay silent. During her lunch break, she drafted an email to the corporate office, detailing the discriminatory practices she had witnessed under Mr. Brooks's leadership. Her hands trembled as she hit send, but she felt a sense of relief, like she was finally taking a stand. Across the city, Avery remained focused on his work. He had deliberately stayed out of the fray, allowing the movement to unfold organically. Instead, he channeled his energy into highlighting smaller, inclusive brands on his platform. Each day, he shared stories of designers and retailers who prioritized respect and creativity over exclusivity, encouraging his followers to support businesses that aligned with their values. "This is where real luxury lives," he wrote in one post. "In spaces where everyone is welcome." The boutique's decline became even more evident as the week progressed. Regular customers who had once been the backbone of Luxe Avenue's sales began canceling orders and moving their business to competitors. Even employees who had long been loyal to Mr. Brooks started questioning their future at the boutique. Several began quietly updating their resumes, anticipating the fallout that seemed inevitable. Lila, however, chose to stay, not out of loyalty to Mr. Brooks, but because she believed the boutique could be salvaged under the right leadership. The corporate office acted quickly on Lila's email. Within days, a team of investigators arrived at Luxe Avenue to conduct a thorough review of its operations. Employees were interviewed about the store's practices, and customer complaints were scrutinized. For Mr. Brooks, the investigation was a nightmare. His usual confidence was replaced by visible frustration as he tried, and failed, to control the narrative. "This is a witch hunt," he grumbled to anyone who would listen. But his protests fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, Haven Jewelry, a rival boutique known for its inclusive practices, was thriving. The controversy surrounding Luxe Avenue had inadvertently drawn attention to Haven, and its owner, Sophia Carter, was quick to seize the opportunity. In an interview with a local news outlet, she emphasized the importance of creating welcoming spaces in the luxury industry. "Luxury isn't about turning people away," she said. "It's about creating an experience that makes everyone feel valued." Her words resonated deeply, further cementing Haven's reputation as a leader in the industry. By the end of the week, the results of the corporate investigation were clear. The report detailed a toxic culture of elitism and discrimination, with Mr. Brooks's leadership identified as the root cause. The corporate office issued a public statement acknowledging the findings and announcing immediate changes to the boutique's management. "We are committed to rebuilding Luxe Avenue as a space that reflects our core values of respect, inclusivity, and excellence," the statement read. Effective immediately, Mr. Brooks is no longer with the company. The announcement sent shockwaves through the boutique. Employees who had grown weary of Mr. Brooks's leadership felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. Lila, in particular, felt a glimmer of hope. With the right leadership, she believed Luxe Avenue could become a space she was proud to work in, a place that prioritized people over appearances. Avery, upon hearing the news, reflected quietly on how far the situation had come. For him, this wasn't about taking down a boutique, it was about challenging a system that had gone unchecked for too long. He hoped the changes at Luxe Avenue would serve as a reminder to other luxury brands. Respect wasn't optional. It was essential. By the weekend, Luxe Avenue's doors remained open, but the boutique was a shadow of its former self. The marble floors and glittering displays were still there, but the atmosphere had shifted. Customers were scarce, the staff was subdued, and the weight of the controversy lingered in the air. For Mr. Brooks, who had prided himself on creating an exclusive sanctuary, the message was clear. Exclusivity without respect wasn't a luxury, it was a liability. In the wake of Mr. Brooks's departure, Luxe Avenue was at a crossroads. The boutique, once a beacon of exclusivity and prestige, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding its shattered reputation. The corporate office wasted no time appointing a new manager, someone they believed could lead the boutique into a brighter, more inclusive future. That someone was Rachel Morgan, a seasoned professional with a reputation for transforming struggling businesses into thriving success stories. Rachel arrived at Luxe Avenue on her first day with a calm but commanding presence. Dressed in a chic yet approachable ensemble, she carried herself with an air of quiet confidence. Unlike Mr. Brooks, Rachel believed that true luxury wasn't about excluding people. It was about creating an experience that celebrated everyone who walked through the door. As she stepped into the boutique, the staff gathered nervously, unsure of what to expect. "Good morning, everyone," Rachel began, her tone warm but firm. "I know the past few weeks have been difficult. I won't pretend that rebuilding this boutique will be easy, but I promise you this, we're going to do it the right way. Luxe Avenue will no longer be a place where people feel judged or excluded. It will be a space where everyone, customers and staff alike, feels valued and respected." The room was silent at first, but Rachel's words began to sink in. Lila, who had been grappling with her own role in the boutique's culture, felt a spark of hope. For the first time since she started working at Luxe Avenue, she believed that change might actually be possible. Rachel wasted no time implementing her vision. She began by holding one-on-one meetings with each staff member, giving them a chance to share their experiences and ideas for improvement. Lila, nervous but determined, spoke candidly about the toxic environment under Mr. Brooks's leadership. "I always felt like I couldn't speak up," she admitted. "But I want to help make this place better." Rachel listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you for sharing that," she said. "Your voice is important, and we're going to need it as we move forward." The boutique's operations underwent a dramatic overhaul. Rachel introduced mandatory training sessions focused on empathy, active listening, and customer engagement. She also revamped the hiring process to prioritize diversity and inclusion, ensuring that the staff reflected the values she wanted Luxe Avenue to embody. "Luxury isn't about the clothes or the jewelry," Rachel explained during one session. "It's about how we make people feel. That's what sets us apart." The physical layout of the boutique also began to change. Rachel worked with designers to create a more welcoming atmosphere, replacing the cold, intimidating displays with softer, more inviting arrangements. She added a community spotlight section near the entrance, showcasing pieces from emerging designers who often struggled to break into the high-end market. These changes sent a clear message. Luxe Avenue was no longer a place that celebrated exclusivity, it was a place that celebrated creativity and connection. Customers were slow to return at first. The controversy surrounding Luxe Avenue had left a lasting impression, and many former patrons were hesitant to give the boutique another chance. But Rachel wasn't discouraged. She knew that trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. It had to be earned, one customer at a time. Rachel also reached out to Avery James. She had read the reports about his experience and understood the role it had played in Luxe Avenue's downfall. Writing to him wasn't easy, but Rachel believed it was necessary. In her letter, she acknowledged the boutique's past mistakes and outlined the steps being taken to address them. "We know we can't undo the harm that was done," she wrote. "But we are committed to doing better, and I would be honored if you would consider visiting us again to see the changes for yourself." Avery received Rachel's letter with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. He appreciated her candor but wasn't sure if Luxe Avenue's transformation was genuine or just a performance. After some thought, he decided to observe from a distance before making any decisions. For Avery, this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about ensuring that Luxe Avenue's changes were real and lasting. Meanwhile, Rachel continued to make strides. She partnered with local nonprofits to host community events at the boutique, including fashion workshops and fundraisers for underserved communities. These events not only brought people into the store, but also reinforced Luxe Avenue's commitment to inclusivity and giving back. The boutique's reputation slowly began to recover, with new customers drawn to its refreshed values and offerings. Lila, inspired by Rachel's leadership, took on a more active role in the boutique's transformation. She volunteered to lead customer service training sessions and even suggested a monthly Customer Appreciation Day, where the boutique would offer free consultations and styling advice. Rachel embraced the idea, seeing it as another way to rebuild trust with the community. As the weeks passed, Luxe Avenue began to feel like a different place. The staff worked together with a renewed sense of purpose, and customers who had once felt unwelcome now spoke warmly of their experiences. One customer wrote in an online review, "The changes at Luxe Avenue are incredible. I used to feel out of place there, but now it's one of my favorite shops. They really care about their customers." Rachel, however, knew that there was still work to be done. Rebuilding a brand was a marathon, not a sprint, and she remained focused on the long-term goal of making Luxe Avenue a leader in inclusivity and customer experience. "This isn't just about fixing what was broken," she told her team during a staff meeting. "It's about creating something better, something we can all be proud of." Avery, observing from afar, couldn't help but notice the changes taking shape at Luxe Avenue. The boutique's social media posts, once filled with cold and pretentious imagery, now showcased community events, customer stories, and collaborations with diverse designers. Slowly, he began to believe that the transformation might be real. But there was one thing that still weighed on his mind. Would Luxe Avenue's new leadership acknowledge the broader issues in the industry, or would their efforts stop at saving their own reputation? The stage was set for a pivotal moment, one that would determine whether Luxe Avenue's transformation was truly meaningful or merely surface level. And as Rachel continued to push for change, she knew that the boutique's journey was far from over. Luxe Avenue's transformation was no longer just an idea, it was becoming a reality. Rachel Morgan had spent weeks reshaping every aspect of the boutique, from its operations to its culture, but she knew that change couldn't happen in isolation. To truly rebuild Luxe Avenue's reputation, she needed to show the world that the boutique was committed to making amends and creating meaningful impact. One of Rachel's first major initiatives was to host a community open house. Unlike the exclusive events that had once defined Luxe Avenue, this gathering was open to everyone, regardless of background or appearance. The boutique's doors were flung wide, and the space that had once felt intimidating and unwelcoming now buzzed with energy and excitement. Rachel personally greeted every guest, her genuine warmth setting the tone for the event. The open house featured interactive displays showcasing the craftsmanship behind the boutique's pieces, along with workshops led by local designers. A portion of the proceeds from any purchases made during the event was donated to a non-profit organization supporting underserved youth in the fashion industry. "We're not just a boutique," Rachel told attendees during her opening remarks. "We're part of this community, and we want to give back in meaningful ways." The event was a resounding success. Customers who had once felt excluded by Luxe Avenue's elitist atmosphere were surprised by the boutique's new approach. "It feels so different now," one attendee remarked. "Like they actually care about the people who walk through their doors." The positive feedback began to spread, both through word of mouth and on social media, where attendees shared photos and stories from the event using the hashtag #NewLuxe. Avery James watched the open house from afar, his curiosity piqued by the flood of social media posts. He still hadn't decided whether to accept Rachel's invitation to visit the boutique, but he was beginning to believe that the changes at Luxe Avenue might be genuine. The question that lingered in his mind, however, was whether those changes would last, or if they were simply a response to the backlash. Inside the boutique, Rachel continued to push forward. She introduced a mentorship program for young designers, providing them with resources and opportunities to showcase their work. The program included a dedicated section of the boutique called Emerging Voices, where customers could purchase pieces from up-and-coming talents. The initiative quickly gained traction, with many customers praising Luxe Avenue for using its platform to uplift others. Lila, who had once questioned her place at the boutique, found herself thriving under Rachel's leadership. She had taken on more responsibility, leading customer service training sessions and mentoring new hires. For Lila, the transformation wasn't just about the boutique, it was personal. "I used to feel like I couldn't make a difference here," she confided to Rachel during a staff meeting. "But now, I feel like we're part of something bigger." Rachel's efforts extended beyond the boutique itself. She reached out to the corporate office with a proposal to implement similar changes across all Luxe Avenue locations. The corporate executives, impressed by the boutique's progress under her leadership, approved the initiative and began rolling out diversity and inclusion training across the brand. Rachel knew this was just one step in a larger journey, but it was a step in the right direction. Despite the progress, there were still challenges to overcome. Some long-time customers resisted the changes, complaining that the boutique had lost its exclusivity. "This place used to feel special," one customer said during a particularly tense interaction. "Now it's just like any other store." Rachel handled the criticism with grace, calmly explaining that Luxe Avenue's commitment to inclusivity didn't diminish its quality, it enhanced it. "Luxury isn't about excluding people," she said. "It's about creating an experience that everyone can appreciate." The boutique's newfound values resonated deeply with many in the community, including those who had once been turned away. One day, a young woman entered the store wearing a simple sundress and sneakers. She had hesitated before walking in, unsure if she would be welcome. To her surprise, Lila greeted her with a warm smile and spent over an hour helping her find the perfect outfit for an upcoming event. The woman left the boutique beaming, later sharing her experience online. "This isn't the Luxe Avenue I remember," she wrote. "It's better." As the boutique regained its footing, Rachel decided it was time to address the past more directly. She organized a public panel discussion titled Redefining Luxury: Inclusivity in the Fashion Industry, inviting designers, activists, and industry leaders to participate. The event was held at the boutique and streamed online, attracting a diverse audience. Avery James, intrigued by the concept, agreed to join the panel after much deliberation. The panel discussion was a pivotal moment for Luxe Avenue. Avery, sitting alongside Rachel and other panelists, spoke candidly about his experience at the boutique and the broader issues it represented. "This isn't just about one store," he said. "It's about challenging the idea that luxury and inclusivity can't coexist. If anything, the true measure of luxury is how it treats people." Rachel, in turn, shared her vision for the boutique's future and her commitment to creating lasting change. "We've made mistakes," she acknowledged. "But we're learning, and we're committed to doing better, not just for our customers, but for the industry as a whole." Her honesty and humility struck a chord with the audience, many of whom had been skeptical of Luxe Avenue's transformation. The event was widely praised, with many attendees commending Luxe Avenue for addressing its past head-on. Social media buzzed with positive feedback, and the boutique's reputation began to shift from a cautionary tale to a story of redemption. Customers returned in greater numbers, drawn by the boutique's new values and refreshed approach. For Avery, the panel marked a turning point. While he remained cautious, he couldn't deny that Luxe Avenue was making meaningful strides. After the event, he approached Rachel to commend her efforts. "You've done a lot of good here," he said. "But remember, change isn't just a moment, it's a process." Rachel nodded, her expression resolute. "We're in it for the long haul," she said. "And I hope we can count on your support as we move forward." The boutique's journey was far from over, but the seeds of redemption had been firmly planted. Luxe Avenue had gone from a symbol of exclusion to a beacon of possibility, proving that even the most entrenched cultures could change with the right leadership and vision. For Rachel, Avery, and everyone involved, the story was no longer about what Luxe Avenue had been, it was about what it could become. As the weeks turned into months, Luxe Avenue continued its steady climb toward redemption. The boutique that had once been synonymous with exclusion and arrogance was now gaining a new reputation, a place where luxury met inclusivity, where every customer felt seen and valued. Under Rachel Morgan's leadership, the changes weren't just superficial. They were woven into the very fabric of the boutique's identity. The shift wasn't without its challenges. For every new customer who praised the boutique's transformation, there were still skeptics who questioned whether the changes were genuine. Rachel welcomed the skepticism, viewing it as an opportunity to prove Luxe Avenue's commitment through consistent actions rather than hollow words. "We're not here to erase the past," she often said. "We're here to build a better future." One of the boutique's most significant milestones came with the introduction of its Luxe Legacy program, a series of community-focused initiatives designed to give back and foster inclusivity in the fashion industry. The program included workshops for aspiring designers, mentorship opportunities, and scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in fashion. The goal was clear: to ensure that Luxe Avenue wasn't just a store, but a force for positive change. The program's launch event was held at the boutique, drawing a diverse crowd of industry leaders, community members, and loyal customers. Among the attendees was Avery James, whose cautious optimism about Luxe Avenue had grown into genuine support. Standing in the crowd, Avery watched as Rachel took the stage to introduce the program. Her words were clear and heartfelt. "This isn't just about selling luxury, it's about creating opportunities and breaking down barriers. Luxe Avenue is committed to being a part of that change." The audience responded with resounding applause, and the event quickly became a turning point for the boutique. News outlets covered the story, praising Luxe Avenue for its innovative approach to blending commerce with community impact. Social media was abuzz with photos and videos from the event, with many users commenting on how far the boutique had come. "This is what real growth looks like," one post read. Luxe Avenue is setting an example for the entire industry. For Rachel, the success of the Luxe Legacy program was deeply personal. She had always believed that luxury brands had a responsibility to use their influence for good, and seeing that vision come to life at Luxe Avenue was incredibly rewarding. But she knew there was still more work to be done. "Change doesn't happen overnight," she told her team during a staff meeting. "But every step we take gets us closer to where we want to be." Lila, now one of the boutique's most trusted employees, had become a key figure in Luxe Avenue's transformation. She had taken on the role of mentoring new hires, ensuring they understood the boutique's new values and approach. For Lila, the journey had been as much about personal growth as professional development. "This place used to feel so stifling," she confided to a colleague. "But now, it feels like we're actually making a difference." The boutique's transformation didn't just resonate with customers and the community, it also caught the attention of the broader fashion industry. Luxe Avenue began receiving invitations to participate in industry events that had once been out of reach, including a prestigious fashion expo where brands showcased their latest collections and innovations. Rachel saw this as an opportunity to solidify Luxe Avenue's new identity on a larger stage. The expo was a pivotal moment for Luxe Avenue. The boutique's booth, designed to reflect its values of inclusivity and creativity, featured pieces from the Emerging Voices collection, which showcased work by up-and-coming designers from diverse backgrounds. The display was a hit, drawing praise from attendees and media alike. "Luxe Avenue has redefined what it means to be a luxury brand," one journalist wrote. "Their commitment to inclusivity is not only admirable but also sets a new standard for the industry." Avery, who had been invited to speak at the expo, used the opportunity to reflect on Luxe Avenue's journey. "What happened at this boutique wasn't just a lesson for them, it was a lesson for all of us," he said during his keynote address. "It showed that change is possible when we hold ourselves accountable and commit to doing better. Luxe Avenue is proof of that." His words resonated deeply, drawing a standing ovation from the audience. The success of the expo marked another turning point for Luxe Avenue. Customers who had once abandoned the boutique began returning, eager to support a brand that had demonstrated genuine growth and accountability. Sales steadily increased, and the boutique's revenue began to recover. But for Rachel, the most meaningful success wasn't financial. It was the stories of customers who now felt welcomed and valued. "I never thought I'd shop here again," one customer wrote in an online review. "But the changes they've made are real, and it shows in every interaction." Despite the progress, Rachel remained focused on the long term. She continued to evaluate the boutique's practices, ensuring that the values of respect and inclusivity were upheld in every aspect of the business. She also maintained open lines of communication with the staff, encouraging them to share feedback and ideas. "This isn't just my vision," she told them during a meeting. "It's ours. And together, we can keep building something truly special." Lila, reflecting on how far the boutique had come, felt a deep sense of pride in her role. She often thought back to the early days of Luxe Avenue's transformation, when she had questioned whether change was even possible. Now, she knew the answer. With the right leadership and a commitment to doing better, even the most entrenched cultures could be reshaped. As Luxe Avenue entered its next chapter, it stood as a testament to the power of accountability and growth. The boutique's journey wasn't just about redemption, it was about setting a new standard for what luxury could and should be. And for Rachel, Avery, Lila, and everyone involved, the story was a reminder that true change starts with a willingness to listen, learn, and lead with integrity. Months after Luxe Avenue began its transformation, the boutique was thriving in ways no one could have imagined. The name that had once been synonymous with exclusion was now a symbol of inclusivity, creativity, and community. The boutique's journey had not only rebuilt its reputation, but had also set a powerful example for the broader fashion industry. Yet, for Rachel Morgan and her team, this was just the beginning of a much larger story. One sunny afternoon, the boutique was bustling with activity. Customers from all walks of life browsed the displays, chatting with the friendly staff and admiring the work of emerging designers featured in the Emerging Voices collection. Among them was a young designer named Jasmine Ortiz, who had recently joined the Luxe Legacy Mentorship Program. For Jasmine, seeing her work displayed alongside renowned brands was a dream come true. "I never thought I'd get an opportunity like this," Jasmine confided to Lila as she adjusted one of her pieces in the display. "To be part of something that values my voice, it's incredible." Lila smiled, her pride evident. "That's what Luxe Avenue is about now," she said. "Giving people like you the chance to shine." Moments like these had become commonplace at the boutique, each one a reminder of how far it had come. At the heart of Luxe Avenue's success was its unwavering commitment to its values. Rachel had worked tirelessly to ensure that the boutique's transformation wasn't just a surface-level change, but a deep, lasting shift in how it operated. From its hiring practices to its partnerships, every decision reflected a dedication to respect, inclusivity, and excellence. "Luxury isn't just about what we sell," Rachel often reminded her team. "It's about how we make people feel." One of the most significant moments in Luxe Avenue's resurgence came when it received an award from a prestigious industry organization for its efforts in promoting diversity and inclusion. The recognition was a powerful validation of the boutique's journey, and Rachel accepted the award with humility. "This honor belongs to everyone who believed in our vision and worked tirelessly to make it a reality," she said during her acceptance speech. "It's proof that when we choose accountability and growth, we can create something truly extraordinary." Avery James, who had been a key figure in Luxe Avenue's transformation, watched its continued success with quiet satisfaction. While he had initially approached the boutique's changes with skepticism, he had come to respect the authenticity of its efforts. One day, Avery decided it was time to return to Luxe Avenue, not as a critic, but as a supporter. He walked through the boutique's doors, this time greeted warmly by Lila, who immediately recognized him. "Welcome back, Mr. James," she said with a genuine smile. "It's an honor to have you here." Avery nodded, taking in the vibrant energy of the space. The boutique was unrecognizable from the place he had walked out of months ago. "It's good to be back," he said simply, his voice tinged with approval. For Avery, this visit wasn't just about shopping, it was about acknowledging the progress Luxe Avenue had made. Rachel, informed of Avery's visit, stepped out of her office to greet him personally. "Mr. James," she said warmly, extending her hand. "I can't tell you how much your presence means to us today." Avery shook her hand, his expression thoughtful. "You've done something remarkable here," he said. "But remember, the real work is in keeping it going." Rachel nodded, her determination evident. "We're ready for that work," she said. "And we're grateful for your belief in us." As Avery browsed the boutique, he found himself drawn to the Emerging Voices collection. The pieces, created by young designers like Jasmine Ortiz, showcased bold, innovative designs that reflected a fresh perspective on luxury. Avery selected a jacket that caught his eye, its intricate details a testament to the designer's talent. As he made his purchase, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just in the boutique, but in the future it represented. Luxe Avenue's resurgence wasn't just about sales or accolades, it was about impact. The boutique's mentorship programs and community initiatives had inspired other brands to follow suit, sparking a ripple effect across the industry. Competitors who had once dismissed Luxe Avenue's transformation as a PR stunt began adopting similar practices, realizing that inclusivity wasn't just the right thing to do, it was also good for business. Despite its success, Rachel remained vigilant. She knew that sustaining change required constant effort and accountability. She continued to hold regular staff meetings, encouraging open dialogue and feedback. "This isn't just my vision," she often reminded her team. "It's ours. And it's up to all of us to keep it alive." Her leadership had transformed Luxe Avenue into more than just a workplace. It was now a community built on shared values and mutual respect. One evening, as the boutique prepared to close, Lila reflected on her own journey. She had started at Luxe Avenue feeling unsure of her place, but now, she was one of its most trusted team members. Watching customers leave with smiles on their faces, she felt a deep sense of pride. "We did this," she thought. "We turned this place into something amazing." For the broader community, Luxe Avenue's transformation served as a powerful reminder of what was possible when businesses chose accountability over arrogance. Customers who had once felt excluded now spoke of the boutique as a place where they felt valued and respected. "Luxe Avenue isn't just a store anymore," one customer wrote in a glowing review. "It's a symbol of what luxury should be." Avery, reflecting on the boutique's journey, saw it as a testament to the power of action. "It's easy to talk about change," he said during an interview. "But Luxe Avenue proved that real change takes work, and it's worth every effort." His words resonated deeply, inspiring other businesses to follow Luxe Avenue's example and prioritize respect and inclusivity in their own operations. As Luxe Avenue entered its next chapter, it stood as a beacon of hope and possibility. The boutique's legacy wasn't just about redemption, it was about proving that even the most entrenched cultures could evolve with the right leadership and a commitment to growth. For Rachel, Avery, Lila, and everyone involved, the story of Luxe Avenue was a reminder that true luxury wasn't about exclusivity. It was about connection, compassion, and the courage to do better. As Luxe Avenue's story unfolded, it became more than just a tale of a boutique's transformation. It was a story about resilience, accountability, and the power of change. The journey wasn't perfect, and the challenges along the way were many, but what mattered most was the willingness to confront mistakes and take steps toward a better future. The boutique, once infamous for its culture of exclusion, had now become a hub for creativity and inclusivity. Its success wasn't measured solely by sales or accolades, but by the connections it had forged and the lives it had impacted. From the young designers in the Emerging Voices collection to the loyal customers who had returned after years of feeling unwelcome, Luxe Avenue had become a symbol of what luxury could be when it embraced humanity. For Rachel Morgan, this transformation was deeply personal. Standing in the boutique one evening after closing, she reflected on how far they had come. She thought about the initial days of uncertainty, the backlash, and the skepticism that had surrounded her efforts. But she also thought about the moments of triumph. The open house that had brought the community together, the mentorship program that had given young designers a platform, and the customers who now left the boutique feeling valued and respected. Rachel's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. "Lost in thought?" Avery James asked, stepping into the boutique. He had returned unannounced, his presence as calm and composed as ever. Rachel smiled, gesturing for him to join her. "Just reflecting," she said. "It's been a journey, hasn't it?" Avery nodded, his gaze sweeping over the boutique. "It has," he said. "And it's been worth it." The two stood in silence for a moment, both taking in the significance of what had been achieved. Avery had seen the boutique at its worst, but now, he could see the potential it had unlocked. "You know," he said finally, "this place isn't just a boutique anymore. It's an example. A reminder that change is possible, even when it feels impossible." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "That's what we've been working toward," she said. "And I hope we can keep building on it." Meanwhile, Lila was wrapping up her duties for the day, her pride in Luxe Avenue stronger than ever. She had been part of the boutique during its darkest days, and now, she was part of its brightest. "This isn't just a job anymore," she thought as she turned off the lights. "It's a place where people matter, and that's what makes it special." Beyond Luxe Avenue, the boutique story was inspiring change across the fashion industry. Brands that had once prioritized exclusivity over inclusivity were beginning to reevaluate their values. Competitors who had dismissed Luxe Avenue's transformation as a temporary fix now saw it as a blueprint for success. The ripple effects were undeniable, proving that accountability wasn't just good ethics, it was good business. Avery, reflecting on his role in the boutique's journey, felt a sense of fulfillment. He hadn't set out to change Luxe Avenue, he had simply stood up for what he believed in. But his actions had sparked something greater, something that extended far beyond a single boutique. Sometimes, he said during an interview, all it takes is one moment of courage to start a movement. The boutique's legacy continued to grow, but Rachel remained grounded. She knew that the work of maintaining Luxe Avenue's values was ongoing. She continued to lead with integrity, encouraging her team to embrace feedback, adapt to challenges, and stay true to their mission. Change isn't a destination, she often reminded them. It's a journey, and we're all on it together. One evening, Luxe Avenue hosted a celebratory event marking a year since the boutique's transformation began. Customers, designers, and community members gathered to reflect on the journey and look ahead to the future. Rachel took the stage to address the crowd, her voice steady but emotional. "This boutique has been through so much," she said. "But what I've learned is that even in our darkest moments, there's always an opportunity for growth. Luxe Avenue isn't just about luxury, it's about people. And we will continue to honor that every single day." The audience erupted in applause, and as Rachel stepped down, she was greeted by Avery. "Beautiful speech," he said, his approval evident. Rachel smiled, her gratitude genuine. "Thank you," she said. "But it's not just my story, it's ours. Everyone here has been part of this journey, including you." Avery nodded, his respect for Rachel and her team clear. "You've built something incredible here," he said. "And I hope it inspires others to do the same." By the end of the evening, the boutique was buzzing with energy, a far cry from the tense, silent atmosphere it had once known. Customers mingled with designers, staff members shared stories with attendees, and the space felt alive with possibility. Luxe Avenue had become more than a store, it had become a community. As the night wound down, Rachel stood at the boutique's entrance, watching as the last guests departed. Avery lingered for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. "Do you think the work is ever done?" he asked. Rachel shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "No," she said. "But that's the beauty of it. There's always more to learn, more to do, and more ways to grow." Luxe Avenue's journey was far from over, but it had proven one undeniable truth: change was possible. It required courage, accountability, and a willingness to face hard truths, but the results were worth it. For Rachel, Avery, Lila, and everyone who had been part of the boutique's transformation, the story of Luxe Avenue wasn't just about redemption. It was about hope, growth, and the enduring power of doing what's right. Luxe Avenue's story serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how far we fall, there's always a path to redemption if we're willing to take it. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And at the heart of every meaningful change is a simple truth: treating others with respect is never a choice. It's a necessity. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire change and spark meaningful conversations.